Citizens of the United States, let us begin with a document. It is not a declaration. It is not a constitution. It is a law that changed the course of human history, a law that codified the fiction, a law that turned the womb into a factory and the child into property. The law is Partus Sequitur Ventrem. That which is born follows the womb. In 1662, the Virginia colony enacted this doctrine. It broke with English common law, which had traditionally determined a child's status through the father. It replaced that tradition with a new rule. The child of an enslaved woman was enslaved for life. The law was not an accident. It was a design. It was a design to ensure that the children of the enslaved remained enslaved. It was a design to ensure that the mixed race children of the enslaver became property, not heirs. It was a design to ensure that the fiction of race was perpetuated through the bloodline. It was a design to ensure that the skin of the mother determined the fate of the child. It was a design to ensure that the womb became a factory of extraction. The law was cold. The law was calculated. The law was opportunistic. It severed any paternal obligation. It absolved white fathers of any responsibility. It turned reproduction into profit. It increased the human inventory at no extra cost. It gave white men complete legal impunity. The law was the mechanism of the Ponzi scheme. Let us examine the absurdity. The fiction of race was built on the premise that Black people were inherently inferior, that they were not fully human, that they were property. But the fiction was not consistent. If Black people were property, why did the law need to specify that the child followed the condition of the mother? If Black people were inherently inferior, why did the enslaver's own blood make no difference? If the fiction was real, why did it require such elaborate legal machinery to enforce? The fiction was not consistent because it was not real. It was a legal construction. It was a financial instrument. It was a mechanism of extraction. The fiction was opportunistic. It did not care about biology. It did not care about ancestry. It did not care about the soul. It cared about profit. It cared about control. It cared about extraction. The oppressor's child was proof. The oppressor's child, the child of the white enslaver and the enslaved woman, was biologically the child of the oppressor. But the law did not care. The law made the child property. The law enslaved the child of the oppressor. The fiction was not about race. It was about extraction. Let us examine the economics. The doctrine of Partus Sequitur Ventrem, that which is born follows the womb, turned reproduction of enslaved women into a source of property and capital growth. It increased the enslaver's human inventory at no extra cost. This was not a byproduct of the system. This was the system. The enslaved woman was not just a worker. She was a factory. She produced children. The children were property. The property was wealth. The wealth was extraction. The womb was the engine of the Ponzi scheme. By 1865, there were 4 million enslaved people in the United States. 4 million from natural increase. 4 million from the womb. 4 million who were born into bondage. The womb was the engine. The law did not care about the father. The law did not care about the family. The law did not care about the child. The law cared about the property. The law cared about the profit. The law cared about the extraction. The law was cold. The law was calculated. The law was opportunistic. Let us examine the exception. The reverse was also true under the literal wording of the law. If a white woman gave birth to a child with an enslaved black father, the child was legally born free. The exception is proof of the absurdity. If the fiction was real, why did the child of a white woman and a black man become free, while the child of a white man and a black woman became enslaved? If the fiction was about blood, why did the father's blood matter in one case and not in the other? The exception is proof that the fiction was not about blood. It was about control. It was about profit. It was about extraction. It was about the womb. It was about the factory. It was about the Ponzi scheme. The exception is proof that the fiction was opportunistic. It did not care about consistency. It did not care about biology. It did not care about justice. It cared about the bottom line. It cared about the system. It cared about the extraction. The oppressor's child was forgotten. The child of the white enslaver and the enslaved woman was biologically the child of the oppressor. But the law did not care. The law made the child property. The law enslaved the child of the oppressor. The oppressor's child was proof that the fiction was not about race. It was about power. It was about property. It was about profit. It was about extraction. The oppressor's child was forgotten by history. The history books do not record the names of the children who were fathered by the enslavers and enslaved by the same men. They do not record the stories of the mothers who were exploited and then discarded. They do not record the suffering of the families who were fractured by the law. But the descendants of those children remember. They carried the blood. They carried the pain. They carried the legacy. They carried the proof that the fiction was a lie. The oppressor's child was forgotten, but the oppressor's child is still here. The legacy of Partus, Sequitur, Ventrem, that which is born follows the womb, is still with us. The wealth gap persists. The health gap persists. The education gap persists. The incarceration gap persists. The Ponzi scheme continues. The fiction of race was designed to extract. It was designed to divide. It was designed to control. It was designed to profit. And it is still operating. The EGFR race multiplier delayed kidney treatment for Black patients. The PFT race correction underdiagnosed lung disease in Black patients. The vaginal birth after cesarean calculator reduced access to trial of labor for Black and Hispanic women. The wealth gap persists. The health gap persists. The education gap persists. The extraction continues. But the evidence is clear. The genome has been sequenced. The variation has been mapped. The consensus is settled. There are no discrete, hierarchical, biologically meaningful races. Only humans distributed across a continuous ancient web of genetic variation. Race does not even make it past the hypothesis test. We have made progress. The 13th Amendment ended slavery. The 14th Amendment established equal protection. The 15th Amendment prohibited race-based voting restrictions. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibited discrimination. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 protected the right to vote. The Fair Housing Act of 1968 prohibited housing discrimination. Amendment 28 prohibits racial classification. The Caldwell model is the fast lane to universal equality and equity. We have made progress. We have come a long way from 1662. But the work is not done. The fiction persists. The extraction continues. The Skinner box still operates. The Ponzi scheme still runs. The work is not done. But the path is clear. Let us imagine the post-abolition future. Imagine a world without the fiction. Imagine a world without the boxes. Imagine a world without the categories. Imagine a world without the labels. Imagine a world without the words. Imagine a world where the state does not classify citizens by race. Imagine a world where resources are allocated based on need, not identity. Imagine a world where schools are funded based on the number of students in poverty, not the property values of the surrounding community. Imagine a world where healthcare is available to all, regardless of income, regardless of status, regardless of race. Imagine a world where the Ponzi scheme is liquidated. Imagine a world where the extraction machine is dismantled. Imagine a world where the poor are no longer divided by the fiction of race. Imagine a world where the common enemy is finally recognized and defeated. That world is possible. It is within reach. The Caldwell model is the roadmap. Citizens of the United States, the evidence is clear. The oppressor's child was forgotten, but the oppressor's child is still here. The fiction was designed to extract. It was designed to divide. It was designed to control. It was designed to profit. But the fiction is a lie. The genome has been sequenced. The variation has been mapped. The consensus is settled. There are no discrete, hierarchical, biologically meaningful races. Race does not even make it past the hypothesis test. The jig is up. Refuse to check the box. Demand the abolition of racial classification. Join the Coalition for Amendment 28. Support the Caldwell model. Love your neighbor as yourself. The evidence is clear. The path is mapped. The only question is whether we have the will to act. I await your verdict.